So I met a stranger 2 years ago who changed my life in the course of hours. I just turned 27, I quit my job, I severed a lot of ties, and I left Canada, where I'm from, and moved to New York. It was not a great idea for many reasons. It didn't make sense professionally, financially, socially. It didn't make sense, but I just had a feeling that I needed to go, and I needed to make a big change. I had a few days of really kind of extreme doubt, really wondering if I made the right decision. And on one of those days, I went into a coffee shop and I sat down and I started doing some work and, just trying to distract myself from some of the stress. A woman walks in and she has kind of gray hair about shoulder length. She's wearing a long black dress and she looks to be about in her early to mid 70s. And right away, I have this feeling that I want to talk to her. It's a strange thing. It's almost like if you're in a department store and you're walking by a mannequin and you feel the presence of the mannequin as if it's a person. It was like that, but on some other level. I just felt like there was a presence and I needed to interact with her, but I'm very introverted, so there's no chance that I would make the first move. So I go back to my work, she orders a drink, and she ends up taking a seat right next to me. And we don't say anything to each other until a dog comes in, and the dog is barking, and she says that dog comes in every single day and it knows that it's getting something, so it gets really excited. And I say, oh, it's really cute. And she said, I used to have a dog, but I gave it to my in-laws to dog sit once and they put it down. And so now I call them the dog, or DK for short. And I mean, it's a morbid story, but it happened in the 70s and we start laughing. And she says, I just felt like I really needed to talk to you. Sorry, I'm getting freaked out. She says, I just feel like I really needed to talk to you. And I go, oh yeah? And she says, yeah. Did you just turn 27? And I said, yeah, I turned 27 about a month ago. And she goes, you're also not from here, you just moved here. And I said, yeah. And she said, okay, nothing I'm gonna tell you is new. It's all information that you already know. Consider this a hug from the universe. She starts to ask me questions about myself. She says, what were you like as a kid? And I would think about it, and before I could even answer, she would tell me what my answer was. And some of the answers, I guess, could be generic, but some of them were very specific, especially for a first guess. She said, when you were a kid, you struggled with the idea of having a body, you felt very cerebral, you always felt like an adult, and you've probably felt like you were a static age your whole life, and that is true. She also asked me about my creative process, of which I have none. I just kind of I get in a good mood and then kind of divine things out of thin air. And she tells me that. And she tells me a few other really specific things about the inner workings of my mind that are completely accurate. And she says that she needs to let me know that everything's going to be okay. She says the first 27 years of my life I spent gathering, that I'm going to learn things for the rest of my life, but for the most part I'm done, and it's showtime now. And I ask her what that means, and she says, the thing that you're going to do with your life doesn't yet exist, but you're going to be very good at it, so don't worry, just hang in there. You haven't made a mistake.
Chris is pretty calm to say that this total stranger knows so much about him. Maybe she is a scammer, or maybe she came into his life when he needed her. Either way, this unusual circumstance was exactly what Chris needed to have.
She said to me, in this life, I'm much older than you, but really, you're much older than me, and I can feel it, and that's why I want to talk to you. And she said that, everybody has a life, but they also have a series of lives, and they develop along that series. And so she said, I'm older than you in this life, but in the grand scheme of things, you're much older than me. And the conversation is a mix of these kinds of spiritual things, information about me that I already know, and then she'll tell me a funny anecdote. I'm not really freaked out by any of this. It just feels really comfortable and natural. Somehow, over the course of this conversation, 7 hours have passed, and I get kicked out of the coffee shop with her. The barista comes over and says, I'm sorry, but you have to leave. At this point, it's probably midnight or 1 a.m. And I realize that all this time has passed and it's just all felt so natural. And she says to me, I'm an old lady from LA and you're a young person from Canada. We shouldn't have anything in common. This is very strange. And I said, yeah, I agree. I can't believe we had this conversation and I don't even know your name. We haven't even exchanged names. And she said, yeah, I know, but that's not really important. And I said, I know, but I would like to know your name. And she tells me that her name is Laura. I tell her my name, and we hug, and we both tear up a little bit. And I say to her, I had a friend who moved away once, and when we were getting really upset about the move, they said to me, Chris, you always meet twice. You never just meet somebody one time, so we'll meet again. And so I tell her this, and she says, yeah, maybe we'll meet again, unless this is the second time. And with that, she walks away into the darkness. And so, what do I think about this all? So one possibility is that she's a very good cold reader, which is kind of how these corner store psychics work. They are really good at intuiting information about people and pulling it out, and it's not something supernatural. Another could be that maybe we just really relate to each other. We have things in common, and it's only really interesting or surprising because of the kind of gulf in demographics between us. Maybe there's something supernatural happening. Maybe there's some kind of other explanation that I'm not privy to. But I think over the years, even though I'm still curious as to how this happened, I've come to accept that whatever it was, this person came into my life at a time when I really just needed somebody to give me a thumbs up and to tell me to keep going. And I did. I think that was the last day that I had any major doubt. And a lot of things that I needed to fall into place with my life have fallen into place. And so, Laura, if you can see this, which I don't think you can, thank you.
Chris seems utterly shaken by this unusual moment, doesn't he? How an old lady can walk into his life and know so much about him. Seems a little bit weird, but sometimes these things happen to us which we can't explain. But thankfully, this was a positive experience for Chris, which helped validate his move to a new city and propel him into adulthood. The commenters were baffled by his story, with one person saying, "I want to believe you two knew each other in a different life, familiar souls." And another person saying, "I think Laura's a witch." And lastly, as a spiritual person, this is a beautiful story of how the universe works. Couldn't agree more. As always, thank you so much for watching Happiest. If you like this video, then be sure to follow our Instagram and our TikTok pages for more heartwarming videos like this one. And if you've got any of your own videos you'd like us to share, be sure to send those in.